Brothers and sisters, as you may well know, the first readings for Sunday Masses have been specifically chosen based on their thematic links to the Gospel readings. The first reading is usually a window into some revelation given in the Gospel, or another way of putting it, the Gospel presents a fulfillment of what was either prophesied or alluded to in the first reading. As Vatican II tells us in De Verbum, its dogmatic constitution on divine revelation, God, the inspirer and author of both testaments, wisely arranged that the New Testament be hidden in the Old and the Old be made manifest in the New. Given that, you may very well be asking yourselves after hearing today's readings, what is the link here between Job's laments and Jesus exercising his healing ministry? I struggled myself to see the link until I reflected more on who exactly was the cause of Job's lamenting. Well, as we know in the story of Job, Satan was given some dominion over him by God to test his faith. Job, in his laments, was seeking relief from Satan's attack on his livelihood, and perhaps more importantly, on his family and on his own life. In contrast, today's Gospel shows us Jesus in his divine ministry, demonstrating that he is the master over all things, including Satan. He brings much needed relief to so many by fighting against and defeating that same adversary who has beset the people of God since the beginning of time, with all sorts of physical and moral ills, including full-blown diabolical possession. Pope Francis once said that the adversary wants to keep us separated from God, and therefore instills disappointment in our hearts when we do not see our apostolic commitment immediately rewarded. Every day the devil sows the seeds of pessimism and bitterness in our hearts. This pessimism and bitterness, brothers and sisters, is clear in the words and attitudes of Job when all was going astray for him. As we see in the first reading, Job's despair, laments, complaints, and one could even say affronts to the goodness of God, are all the result of the direct attacks of Satan, who in the book of Job is constantly visible as the underlying challenger of God and all that is good. Interestingly, apart from one reference in the first book of Chronicles and 3 references in the book of the prophet Zechariah, the book of Job is the only other Old Testament book that specifically refers to the person of Satan. In fact, in the book of Job, Satan is mentioned 12 times and is the source and cause of the great suffering that Job is undergoing. But the devil's existence in the Old Testament is not only evident when he's specifically named as Satan. As Pope Francis reminds us, the presence of the devil is on the first page of the Bible, and the Bible ends as well with the presence of the devil. Brothers and sisters, in last week's Gospel, we saw Jesus exorcising a demon from a man in the synagogue. Today, as he leaves the synagogue, and after healing Simon Peter's mother-in-law of her illness, he's barraged by those suffering from diseases of one kind or another, and the possessed who've come to be freed of the evils that beset them. And so, as in last week's Gospel, today Jesus continues to free so many throughout all of Galilee from the power of Satan. And just because we live 2,000 years later doesn't mean we are free from similar attacks from Satan. Vatican Radio once wrote, Pope Francis said the life of every Christian is a constant battle against evil, just as Jesus during his life had to struggle against the devil and his many temptations. And he warned that whoever wants to follow Jesus must be aware of this reality. In this same article, the Pope is quoted as saying, "We too are tempted. We too are the target of attacks by the devil, because the spirit of evil does not want our holiness. He does not want our Christian witness. He does not want us to be disciples of Christ." Brothers and sisters, with modern science, medicine and psychology claiming to have the answers to all the world's ills, I wonder if we will find many people in the world, including Catholics, who believe in the existence of the person of Satan, the one who is evil personified. Interestingly, Pope Francis, addressing that very question, said, "Maybe some of you might say, 'But Father, how old-fashioned you are to speak about the devil in the 21st century. But look out, because the devil is present. The devil is here, even in the 21st century. And we mustn't be naive, right? We must learn from the gospel how to fight against Satan. Brothers and sisters, I've read a bit of what the last three popes have said, and I'm happy to stand corrected, but I'm confident Pope Francis speaks more often of Satan than Pope Benedict or Pope John Paul II. Sadly, much of the secular media does not print these words as it does not fit into their liberal ideology. And so in finishing, I would like to address this lack of airplay with a final quote by Pope Francis, who at the end of the day is just reaffirming what both Scripture says and the Church has always taught. In response to those who would say to him, "But Father, you're a little ancient, you're frightening us with these things," Pope Francis would respond, "No, not me. It is the gospel, and these are not lies. It is the word of the Lord."